You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, training camp, hard as it is to believe, Zach, is like really about to begin any day now, this week. I mean, I don't know which day we want to say it actually begins, because there's a day of, paperwork and logistics that nobody really cares about, where it technically starts. But I mean, players about to hit the ice, so that means it's time to ask the 10 questions facing the LA Kings during training camp. Here to join me, Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, I am great, but not quite as great as you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't know we were going to talk about it, but yeah, sure. For those who care, I went to City of Hope today, which is the medical facility where I go for my oncological concerns. And I found out that I'm in what's known as metabolic remission. So for the next 3 months, I don't have to worry about cancer unless any symptoms come back. 3 months from now, I'll have another scan. And if everything stays the same, I'll have another scan after that. If things get better, I might have another scan much further down the road. If things get worse, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but everything looks good. So moving on. It's been a really weird, long, I don't want to say year, because it's only been 6 months. I was trying to add it up in my head the other day. I think it's 6.5 months. It's like basically from February 1st to we're recording this on September 15th. So 6.5 months, give or take.
7, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long half year. Let's put it that way.
It's for sure.
Yeah, but now we're getting into training camp. Timing is perfect. New beginnings, new starts. So question 1 is probably the easiest, and I think you and I both agree that it's the easiest, and that's why it's the nicest one to start out with. Question number 1 is, which goalies will go to which teams? And every one of these questions is always going to contain this sentence, and I know John Hoven doesn't like when I bring up this concept, and we'll get to why later, but barring injury, it's pretty clear which goalies are going to go to which teams. Kemper and Forsberg should go to the Kings. Copley and Portillo should go to the Reign, and Scholl and Seville should go to the Swamp Rabbits. But as long as we're talking about it, let's do some stick taps for the performance Seville gave in game 1 of the rookie tournament. And Carter George, who will be at camp but will probably be returned to his junior team, had an incredible second night down there in Irvine.
Really
afternoon.
Cool. Really cool for Isaiah Seville, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you look at his story, he missed all of last year with an injury, and you could just tell, like, it meant something to him when he was talking about it after the game. Like, it was good for him to get into that game. He has played in the AHL for multiple years. He's above that tournament from that standpoint. But the dude missed all of last year with an injury. And it was just cool for him to get that moment, right? Not only did he get back in, but he played so well. He didn't allow a goal in about 30 minutes of action. You have to imagine he's kind of that swing goalie, right? You talk about barring injury. He's the kind of guy who has played in the AHL. He's on an AHL deal and would not be overwhelmed at all by being an AHL backup if anything were to happen. So he's probably your de facto 5th goalie. And it was cool for him to get into that game. And Carter George, I mean, you and I both, think very highly of him.
Yeah.
As we've talked about a number of times, 37 saves on 38 shots, on top of doing the exact same thing in his preseason games in the OHL. He was leading the OHL in early preseason save percentage when I looked earlier today. So kid's done just about everything he could have, right? In these
100%, yeah.
In this way, like, what more could he have done? You'd love to see what he could do in the AHL this year. Just unfortunately, we likely won't get that chance.
Yeah. And, as Isaiah Seville, I only knew the name initially because when the announcement came out that he signed an AHL contract in the summer, I noticed it. I jotted his name down, right? I added him onto my spreadsheet. I was like, okay, that's cool. Green Rabbits, probably, or Swamp Rabbits, Greenville. Then when rookie camp started and I noticed he was on the roster, I was like, okay, that's the guy, all right, that's who he is. And, a bunch of people in camp were like, I don't think he was listed on the camp roster at one point. And so there were certain people attending camp who were like, I don't know, who's this third kid? And I was like, yeah, he's Isaiah Seville. He's, like, I knew barely enough about him. After that first day in Irvine, I'll never forget his name again.
There you go.
I didn't forget it, but I just mean, like, okay, now, he was like I mean, let's be honest, right? How many goalies have come through the system over the years, whether it's to play in Greenville or Ontario, show up for a year, then they move on, doesn't work out, whatever, right? You need goalies, but if especially if you've got a Jonathan Quick in your net, then you got a rotating cast. But yeah, now I'm rooting for the kid. He seems like a really nice kid. I had a chance to talk to him at camp and, made a name for himself. So good for him. And
totally agree. Yeah.
All right. Question 2, how will the goaltenders' work be split up during exhibition games? This is a second separate question having to do with the goalies because there's 6 preseason games, I believe.
The Kings have 7.
7. Okay. Right. I always
which is one more than last year. They did play 6 last year. I looked up the split of work last year, and there is an extra game this year. Last year, Darcy Kemper played 3 full games. David Riddick played 2. Darcy Kemper played 3 games, 2 full games, 1 start that he left early in. Riddick played 2 games, both full. Eric Portillo played 1 game, played the first 40, and Carter George played 2 games, both in relief, both the third period only.
And there's no the team isn't splitting up to go out of town this year, right? There's no Quebec, no Quebec games. There's no Australia games on the schedule. Like the entire team will be together in camp the entire time. And yeah, so I mean, I'm assuming you'd want to get Forsberg some action. I'm assuming you'd want to get Kemper some action. And then, do you get Copley in a game? Do you get Portillo in a game? Do you George, right? Like the next chance George gets to play against professional competition could be next summer. Or professional being, AHL, NHL. I don't want to dismiss the OHL as non-professional, but you know what I mean? Yep. There's a lot of goalies. There's going to be a lot of goalies in camp, and there'd be justification for getting all of them in some games. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely will. Like the only game I'd say I'm confident in who will play it is I think Darcy Kemper will start the last preseason game at home.
Sure.
That one feels pretty steady, right? You feel like he's going to probably play that game. Beyond that, there is an extra preseason game, but there's also an extra goalie because Phoenix Copley was in camp last year, but he was not ready to play in a game during the Kings preseason. So it was really just Kemper, Riddick, Portillo, George. Now, you want to see, I would imagine, all 4 of the top, but you work Phoenix Copley in the mix too, and that is 5 guys for.
Well, and at some point there'll be the camp splits, right, where they send everybody to Ontario. Now, I have no idea when that cut is supposed to happen, but I mean, I think the Reign have 1 preseason game on the 5th, which is actually after the final Kings preseason game. So, and the rules are what the rules are, but there's all, the first preseason game is the Empire Classic.
Yep.
I don't know that it makes sense to put a Kemper or a Forsberg into net for that one, but it doesn't not make sense. And then you've got
makes as much sense as anything else, right?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like you start with Kemper, right? You map out Kemper's work. How many games does Darcy want? If he says he wants 3, because that's what he had last year, you put his 3 down, then you go to Forsberg, and then you get, Portillo, Copley, and George in there. If you want my guess, the Empire Classic will be Eric Portillo in that. Just my guess.
Which would make total sense, right? Because you're also playing to the Reign fans, even though it's Kings versus Ducks, and you should get a lot of local fans making the trip. It is still the home building of the Reign, and you want to have a little familiarity while also helping out your prospects. So, that's why they play the games. I'm going to say that so much this year. It's going to be so annoying. I apologize in advance, everybody.
That is why they play the games.
I feel like I can't remember where the original place where this joke came up, but I feel like I should have a little sign that says that's why they play the games, and just say don't make me tap the sign.
Just hold it up every time.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So then that brings us to question 3, which is why I mentioned barring injury earlier. And I feel like this one is not fully on me, but earlier in the summer when you and I were talking about Corey Perry, I said, there's only one way that his signing isn't interesting. And I said, and I don't even want to reference it because I didn't want to say out loud the way that it wouldn't be interesting if Corey Perry was signed by the Kings if he didn't play. That was it. That was the one scenario where it wouldn't be interesting. Now, as it turns out, knock wood, he will play. It just won't be right away, and so it becomes even more interesting because with his injury, an additional roster spot, at least to start the season, has opened up. And so the question there is, which players saw their odds of making the club, at least for opening night, increase as a result of that open spot?
And this is an important question that we want to word respectfully, right? Because
Yes, totally.
it's like the injury to Corey Perry is a huge storyline, unfortunately. Not, for those who like interesting, like no one wanted this to happen, or just, for nobody wanted this to happen. It sucks that it did, but it did. And, we know that he's out. We know he's not going to make the opening night roster. He won't be back in time. And it opens up opportunities for others. And, the 4 names I wrote down here were Malott, Thomas, Burrows, Greentree.
Yep.
The 4 guys who I thought had the most, quote unquote, to gain from this situation. If you're those guys, you're probably entering on very much a bubble. And with an open spot, those are the 4 guys I thought of who see their odds go up the most. I don't know if you had anybody else that came to mind for you.
No, not really. I mean, the assumption, I think, was heading into training camp, and we'll get into this more later. I think the assumption was that the 4th line would have Armia and Perry on it, with either Hellenius or Turcotte at center. Rotating cast, maybe. It depends. That's why they play the games.
That's why they play the games.
And so outside of those 4 guys, you had Malott and Thomas. Those are the names I have on my list that played in the NHL last year, some number of games. And then, true bubble players, you have, Lee, Ward.
Andre Lee should be on that list too.
Yeah. I mean, even honestly, like guys like Gutman, Brown, Godden, guys with NHL contracts that could theoretically make the leap and as bottom 6 players where you wouldn't be like stunned.
For sure.
The name that you mentioned that I think kind of makes the most sense as an option, not saying it's going to happen, but as an option, just because of the 9-game juniors tryout window, just because of the timing of Corey Perry's expected timing of his absence, he's going to be out for what, 6 to 8 weeks?
6 to 8 weeks, which you're looking at November, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in November.
If you wanted to keep Liam Greentree on the roster for a 9-game tryout without the pressure of saying, okay, we're going to play him every single game in a row, right? Because if you played him 9 games, he'd be gone by the end of October.
Yeah.
You played him every game. And also 4th line duty for a guy like him is, I don't know. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But if you kept him on the roster 6 to 8 weeks, Corey Perry's out, expected to be out. You have, a couple back-to-back games. Like the first opening 2 games of the season are a home game and a road game back-to-back. You've got a back-to-back at the end of October, the 25th and the 26th. I could see situations where maybe it makes sense. 20th, 21st, there's back-to-backs home, road against San Jose, then home against Boston. 28th, 29th of November, there's a road against Anaheim, home against Vancouver, which is not a real road game. But I mean, there's just ways that you could fit 9 games into that opening stretch, let Liam Greentree travel with the team, get a taste of, NHL life, all the benefits and reasons that you would have to keep a kid in juniors, 19-year-old kid who would be slated to juniors. Keep him around, no pressure, not a big deal. Work him into the lineup when you can. Let him get a taste of life when you can't. It doesn't really mess with your lineup too much. I just think that's the sort of most interesting option.
Certainly the most interesting, right? Like, I think ultimately it'll probably be up to Liam Greentree, right?
Yes,
like how
he's got to
ready
perform
when
for sure. Yeah,
I think he gets I think either way he probably got a long look.
Yeah,
in these games, like he's the only guy who's weird, has like a weird situation here that could impact this,
because
right?
he's
Otherwise,
19. Let's just to be clear, he's not weird. It's just that
he's not weird. He's actually
he put up
like
a billion
normal,
points last year. he shouldn't be going to juniors, but the rules say that he can't play in the AHL.
Right.
So yeah,
the obvious answer, the easy answer is like, okay, Jeff Malott sees his odds go up, and and Andre Lee or Akil Thomas or Kyle Burrows or Cole Gutman, one of those guys is the one. But like, Green Tree is interesting because the AHL rule sounds like it won't pass for this year. Sounds like it's a year off, which does not help Green Tree or the Kings in this scenario. And if he does what he can do in camp, like it made a lot less sense if he was forward 14, but maybe a little bit more if there's not a solidified forward 12, right? So it definitely got a lot more interesting for him than it was 72 hours ago.
Yeah, if Perry's in the lineup, and we'll get to sort of more complications on this in a bit. So we'll just sort of slow transition into the next question, which is who is on the fourth line to start the season with Corey Perry out. If Corey Perry was in, as we said, I think the expectation is that the fourth line would be Armia, Perry, and a rotating center of Hellenius and Turcotte. And, if Ken Holland hadn't made the comment that he made about Turcotte, I don't remember which media availability it was. Frankly, my expectation would have been that it's Hellenius, just based on what we saw at the end of last season, which was Hellenius playing center down the stretch and in the playoffs. But Ken Holland did say what he said about Alex Turcotte, and so I think that shifted expectations that like, oh, okay, they're going to give Turcotte every chance to play. So, but those would be the three guys. Then your 13th forward would be whichever one wasn't in the lineup, Hellenius or Turcotte. And then you have, okay, are they going to have a 14th forward? Because they don't necessarily need to have one.
No, and you have Kyle Burrows was on the team all year last year, right? Like,
right.
And 13-8 is very plausible.
Totally. So, that'll be kind of interesting. And then the one thing that we haven't mentioned that I brought up as a joke to you in Irvine, but that I think shouldn't be overlooked as a very real possibility, is that Jim Hiller, who we know very much likes to roll with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, this could be totally plausible opportunity / excuse to do that to start the season. The players...
knew he was just licking his chops when the San Jose Sharks went 11-7.
Yes. Yeah, that
in
caught
a rookie game.
Totally caught me off guard when the Sharks were rolled out 11-7. It took me halfway through the first period to even realize what was happening. But yeah, I mean, listen, the players are all familiar with it, right? Because the roster is largely unchanged. Yes, Armia is new. Yes, Ceci and Dumoulin are new, and Perry was new. But the top 9 forwards, the top 4 defensemen, they all know the drill. And it's not like Corey Perry's going to be out for the year or unknown return, right? It's 6 to 8 weeks. There's a very short expected window. And if they tried 11-7 and it didn't work, you do have Alex Turcotte to put on the, or you do have Akil Thomas or Jeff Malott or
Hellenius.
Or whoever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Hellenius. Yeah. I was talking as if Hellenius was the center again. So I mean, it's again, that's why they play the games. But the other part of preseason that I always find fascinating, and this just to backtrack to the Green Tree conversation, you said it would be up to Green Tree whether or not he sticks around, because playing time is limited by how many preseason games there are. Every player is only going to get so many opportunities to prove what they're worth.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know what the top 9 forward group's capable of. Those guys are not, those spots are not up for grabs. And even, Yoel Armia, his spot is not really up for grabs.
Agree. Yeah. As Corey Perry's was not either.
Yeah, correct. Right. So even if, let's say Andrei Kopitar, Adrian Kempe, Kuzmenko, Fiala, Fogle, all those guys, let's say they only play 2 or 3 preseason games each. That only leaves 3 or 4 games for the other guys to get into. And then if you're a bottom 6 forward in one of those games, that really means you've got about 20 minutes of even strength time, maybe over the preseason. And so you better have a dynamite set of practices. You better be great in the locker room. And every second you're on the ice in a game situation, you better be doing exactly what the coaching staff wants you to do. Otherwise, it just won't amount to anything. There have been seasons past where people have said, oh, this kid, that kid, this person, that person. And I've just shrugged and said, okay, well, how many games are they going to get into realistically?
Yeah. And look, last year we were doing this and we weren't talking about Andre Lee.
No. And what was it?
there
2
was
years
Andre
ago?
Lee.
Yeah, 2 years
We
ago,
weren't talking
Alex
about Alex
Laferriere.
Laferriere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now he just signed a big contract.
Yeah. And both those
Um,
guys played opening night, and I
Yeah,
am positive we were not talking about them in this episode, right? So like
no
there
chance.
always is that one guy who
Yeah, and I will continue to tell this story to laugh at myself. Was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that Jared Shaffrin came and asked about Sean Dursey, and I laughed in his face and was just like, "Yeah, Sean Dursey's not going to play in the NHL. Don't worry about it. Like, nice guy, really nice guy, nice little AHL player, but no, I don't expect him to ever sniff the NHL. Drew Doughty gets hurt. Sean Dursey's making $6 million a year or whatever it is. Like,
yeah,
so."
egg on your face.
Yeah, well, it's me tapping that's why they play the game sign again.
That's why they play the game. So the easy answer to the question is probably the fourth line. If you were a betting person, you would say Turcotte, Hellenius, Armia, right?
Yeah.
The three dudes who are most likely to have that spot. But that's why you play the games. 11-7 does exist in the LA Kings world. And there's a very real chance, especially now with the extra spot, of somebody claiming a roster spot without forcing you to waive another player. Yeah. So if somebody earns that spot, you no longer have to say waive the guy who didn't win that job. Mm-hmm. And that does open the door for a Lee or a Green Tree or a Thomas or a Malott or a someone we're not talking about yet.
Next question is, will any prospects get a real chance to earn a contract / play in the NHL? That sort of ties into what we were just talking about as far as like, there's only so many spots available. There's only so much time available to grab one. There's only so many roster spot, and I know you're going to roll your eyes at this, but you're only allowed 50 contracts. So
where are they at?
I think we're at 48, if I'm not mistaken. But before the Irvine game, Zach, I would have said no chance any of the guys currently on AHL contracts have a shot at elevating from an AHL contract to an NHL ELC. After 2 games, and I know that's sort of silly because it's only 2 games in a rookie tournament, but after that, I'm looking at guys like Kenta Isogai. Jack Hughes is probably a little premature since he just signed that contract. But I
thought they both played really well.
Honestly, Isaiah Seville
played really well.
Yeah, if somehow he gets in a game and he shows out, there are extra spots in that 50 contract limit to,
and it doesn't take much to necessitate an Isaiah Seville being on that deal,
exactly.
For the other guys, it's probably like they're going to have to show it in the AHL, but like, why not? Both of those guys, I thought they both played quite well. Mm-hmm. I walked away feeling pretty good for Jack Hughes, clearly it hasn't gone according to plan for him, but like, man, I thought he did a lot of good things, and I thought Kenta Isogai was pretty impressive as well. So good on those guys.
For a guy I'd literally never heard of before he signed his contract. And Jack Hughes, let's just briefly, I want to talk about Jack Hughes because I don't know, to be fair, I don't know a ton about him other than that he has the same name as a star in New Jersey. And that if you say it fast enough, it sounds like the French phrase for I accuse you.
His dad is the
Jacques
GM
Hughes.
of
Yes, and his dad is Ken Hughes. For those who don't know, he was drafted by the Kings. This summer, his draft rights expired. And generally speaking, a player taken in the first 2 rounds of the NHL entry draft will be signed to, well, I don't know what the numbers are, but generally speaking, the expectation I would think is that they sign
90-something%.
Yeah,
right?
They sign an entry-level contract. And Jack Hughes was signed. He went to go play in college. I think he transferred at one point. Yes, from Northeastern to Boston, or from Boston to Northeastern. I forget which way.
Northeastern to Boston.
And the mood on him soured at some point. And so this summer, it looked like the Kings were not going to exercise the option to sign him to an entry-level contract. It looked like he would be returned to free agency to pursue his career however best he thought should happen. He was signed to an Ontario Reign contract, an AHL contract, which means he's not eligible to play in the NHL currently. It would have been not that surprising for a player whose, young starting career did not go the way expected, to tuck tail and seek his fortunes elsewhere and just say, you know what? Nuts to this. These guys don't want me. I'm out of here. For him to take, I don't want to say this because it sounds like he had it coming, and I don't know the story well enough to imply that, but for him to take his medicine, not only sign an AHL contract instead of an NHL entry-level contract, and then show up and play, you know, as tough a game, 2 games as he did in Irvine, right? Like, he, is a silly phrase, but he played LA Kings hockey those 2 games.
Yeah.
You know, like,
sure.
Good for him, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he could
Totally
have just,
agree.
he could have walked away and said, okay, well, you know, this stinks, but, you know, nuts to those guys. And he's not. He stuck around. He appears totally willing to pay his dues and fight his way back into a career with the LA Kings, and good for him. I admire it.
Completely agree. And he can't, have a 60-point AHL season in 1 weekend at Irvine. He has
Right.
to do that.
Yes.
He did well. Now he
Yeah.
goes to main camp, which he's earned
Mhm.
an invite to. Maybe he gets an NHL preseason game. If he can impress there, he goes to probably an Ontario Reign camp. Maybe he can make that team. And you just don't know, right? Because the other part of the Corey Perry injury is that it bumps somebody up to the NHL roster, but also bumps somebody onto the AHL roster or into
Mhm.
the AHL lineup. And maybe Jack Hughes or Kenta Isekai is one of the guys who benefits from that,
Yep.
trickle down effect, right? So
Mhm.
there are a lot of things like that, and good on those guys for coming in on AHL deals and, I think doing what they needed to do.
And it's always, a bunch of people have asked, I'm sure you and me and Hoven and everybody that was there for the 2 games in Irvine, who stood out, who looked good. And it's tough, right? Because it's just 2 games, and so unless you have like a McDavid or a Matthews, it's unlikely that someone's going to go in there and dazzle so offensively where you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe how good that guy is. So you are looking for, complete player type efforts. And when it's guys that, like I said, when it's Kenta Isekai, when it's Kenny Connors, when it's Jack Hughes, you notice
Jared Wright, that kind of player,
Wright. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You notice it. And then, and then obviously the goalies, it's super easy because they're just there the whole game. But
did Carter George stop the puck? Yes.
Yes, he did quite a bit, as it turns out. So that brings us to question number 6. How many defensemen will the team start the season with? And honestly, that question is only in there and phrased that way because last year they went with 8 defensemen to start the season, and you and I both called it middle of the summer, and everybody ignored us. And I've said
we were all over that one.
Yeah, and I've said it probably too arrogantly for my own good to some people who said like, "Oh, well, how did you and Zach? How did you guys theorize that, or how did you guys guess that?" And I was like, "Well, we didn't guess that.
Right.
We knew that." And
the breadcrumbs were all there. This wasn't a leap.
And there was at least one breadcrumb that was a slice of bread. And I'm not going to reveal how you and I both saw the slice, but like I did want to sort of imply to people heavily, like the fact that Zach and I both know this to be true is not a coincidence. Like,
and we
were told essentially.
We aren't typically your, shove our information down your throats kind of podcast. So
no, or nor are we prone to wild speculation. Like we knew it was 8 defensemen and 13 forwards. It wasn't this year. I have no idea, and maybe you do. but I mean, this year it could be 8, it could be 7. Heck, they could start with 6 defensemen. I have no idea. I doubt it'll be 6.
Let's go. let's go 9.
Why not?
Okay.
But to be clear, they have Anderson, Doughty, Edmondson, Clark, Dumoulin, and Ceci, who I think everybody agrees should be the starting 6 on opening night, barring something unexpected happening at camp. But then you
CVs have there say those are the 6 dudes, right?
Yes, and the rosters or the the
unless there's 7 dudes in the lineup.
Yeah, well, but then you also have Jacob Muvrare and Kyle Burrows. And Kyle Burrows, besides the CV, besides the contract, the organization obviously values what he brings to the organization, not just on the ice, but off the ice, right? Like it is perfectly
100%.
clear that they appreciate his role in the locker room as a veteran, as a personality. I think he makes more than Muvarari. I'm almost positive he does.
He does.
So if it were 7 defensemen, I would expect Jacob Muvarari to be put on waivers to attempt to be sent to Ontario. Not sure that it would work, but I would expect that. But having said that, Jacob Muvarari is now at an age and a career experience place where, maybe he would get claimed off of waivers. Maybe it's not worth it to try and sneak him through. Corey Perry being injured means that they can play around with options. So maybe they do start with 8 defensemen.
I think Jacob Moverara is on the team. Very,
Okay.
very likely.
go.
And we can agree to disagree, right? And the two of those guys, you are paying the same amount of money regardless of where they play.
Right.
They're
Yes.
both on one-way deals. They're both making what they make, where regardless of where they play.
Yep.
But you're spot on with the things that you've mentioned about Kyle Burroughs. And I feel like you see these projections and he's almost written off at times because you're like, oh, they're obviously going to go 14-7 and Moverara played a couple games in the playoffs. It's like,
Right.
But like and I learned this late last year, Kyle Burroughs has played forward in the NHL.
He could be on the fourth line.
So like add him into the mix. Like he's versatile.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good when he was the 7th D. The Kings, I thought, played some maybe one of their best stretches was that 11-7 era when Burroughs was the 7. He is an excellent teammate, attitude, all those kinds of things for a guy who isn't in every night. It's not for everybody, like there are players who don't do, you always heard about Anderson Dolan, how good he was in that role. And he was. And Burroughs was the same way. He was a guy who was terrific in the room and handled his role like such a pro. And if you're talking about him or maybe someone you've never seen in that role, maybe you go with the known, right? Why shake anything up for the 23rd roster spot? And he's played in the NHL. He's a capable third pairing defenseman when needed. So yeah, maybe my gut says 7D, but like I think it's far from a certainty. And I could easily see a world where it's 8.
Yeah, well, and if it is 8, then that definitely would put a lid on the Liam Greentree speculation, right? Because if it's 8, then you only have room for 13 forwards, and then it is Turcotte, Hellenius, Armia plus well, I guess maybe you keep Greentree as the 13th, I guess, but then you're limiting your options as far as healthy scratches and role players and everything. Yeah. This is why they have camp.
This is why
I barked at a younger fan. Everybody's a younger fan than me. I barked at a fan during the summer off season because he was asking repeatedly, well, what is the fourth line going to look like? Who's most likely? And I said, man, you don't know, right? This is why camp happens. And at the time, Corey Perry had not yet been injured. And of course, every conversation that took place prior to the injury is now completely and totally thrown out the window, and camp hasn't even started yet. So
100%. And you know what? I think that this was shaping up on paper to be like a boring camp, and it just got less so, right? Like there's a little bit more to fight for that bubble group.
And so many different permutations, right? Like 7 defensemen, 8 defensemen.
We've listed 6-7 dudes with NHL experience who could easily, you could say, see a path to the roster, right? And it's not that hard.
Yeah. Of the players that I think we know will make the roster, the first, sort of interesting question will be, what will the D pairs be to start the season? And that's question number 7, because this is my assumption, and you correct me if you disagree with it. My assumption, based on experience and what limited media availability we've heard from the front office this summer, my assumption is that the pairs will be Anderson and Doughty, Edmondson and Clark, Dumoulin and Ceci.
Yep.
And I base that off of the fact that Clark is the age he is. I think we're getting to D+5 for him this year. It's the final year of his entry-level contract. And the rhetoric surrounding him from the front office is, this is the year we need to find out if the kid is who we have been saying he is for 4 years now. They obviously like him paired with Edmondson, although in the past there was no Dumoulin option because Dumoulin just got here. CC is used to playing more minutes than a third pair defenseman would traditionally play. Same with Dumoulin. So, I mean, I wouldn't be totally stunned if at some point Dumoulin and CC are the second pair, or if it's Dumoulin and Clark or Edmondson and CC, who knows?
Or a situation where pair 2, pair 3 are less defined.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's
like
playing 20 minutes a game. Something
an
like
elevated role for Clark doesn't necessarily have to mean
right.
an RD2 where the RD2 plays 5 minutes more than the RD3. It could be where he plays 3 minutes more than last year, but still only 1 minute more. You know what I mean? Like
a
lot of worlds where he still gets more. I'd love to. We'd all love to see him be the RD2 because that means he is playing really well, and he's playing as well as we all know he's capable of. That's, I think, the ideal world. But I agree that those are the 3 most likely pairs. And honestly, if Anderson Doughty is the first pair, which I would imagine that it likely will be to start, why split up a pair that the coach liked last year in Edmondson and Clark? It makes the most sense. It's the most likely outcome, unless you want to mess with Anderson Doughty, and then there are a world of possibilities. I think.
Well, if they split up Anderson Doughty, then everything's on the table.
There's so many possibilities if they do that for whatever reason.
But I just don't think they will.
I don't think they will either.
And I don't honestly remember why there was the conversation after the trade deadline about Edmondson and Clark being reunited. I don't recall if the pairs got away from that, but my recollection is that it was made clear at the trade deadline that we like Edmondson with Clark. Putting the 2 of them together, they're going to be a pair. This is happening. Maybe it was because Gavrikov had been replacing
Clark
Doughty, and Doughty
I believe
came
it
back
was
and
the second of Clark's couple of scratches were the games before the deadline.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like, he's going back in. He's going in with this guy, and he's going to play this role.
That tracks. Yeah.
If I recall.
Yeah, but I mean, it's obvious, when last year during camp, it was like, okay, Edmondson is basically, I hate to use this phrase because it's sort of demeaning, but like Edmondson is going to be Clark's training wheels. But then they really obviously liked the pair. And that was heavily implied to be expected down the stretch. Now, as it turns out, Edmondson in the playoffs, Edmondson, Anderson, Doughty, and Gavrikov, I think all played more than 20 minutes a night per game. But Gavrikov's gone. Dumoulin and CC are in. So, like you said, one reduced role doesn't mean necessarily an equivalent increase, or increase for one doesn't mean decrease for the other. So those will be the pairs. The flip side of the same question is number 8. Will the top 9 be the same as the end of last season? And the reason for me that this is important is last season, down the stretch and into the playoffs, the top 9 clicked, seemed everything right. Once Kuzmenko came in and Fiala and Byfield started to find chemistry, although it was before Kuzmenko showed up, and Fogle started working with Deneau and Moore, the top 9 made sense all of a sudden, right? It made perfect sense. You're like, okay, you've got two top lines, either of which could be your top line on any given night. I think Fiala and Byfield actually had more points than Kopitar and Kempe in the final 30 games of the season, if not more. Kuzmenko, clicked with Kopitar and Kempe. He had, I don't remember how many points, he's 0 in the first 7, but after that, I don't know, it was like 17 points in 21 games or something. Or maybe 21 points in 17 games. I could have those numbers backwards. But last season, to start the season, I think the expectation, well, actually, let me correct myself before I even say it out loud. Last season, the expectation was that Fiala would play with Byfield and Fogle.
Right.
But the season prior, he had finished the season with Deneau and Moore. And that line was really quite good. And that was, at the time, the best Fiala had looked in a Kings uniform. So when Byfield, Fiala, and Fogle didn't really work to start the season, and it was broken up quickly into the year, Fiala found himself back on a line with Deneau and Moore, and it didn't work as well as it had the year before. So this year, Fiala, last year, at the end of last season, Fiala did look the best he's ever looked in a Kings jersey, right? Like he did finally look like the complete player you would hope that he would be. He was on pace for an unbelievable, full 82 season if you extrapolated it out. LaFerriere developed new contract, right? Sky's the limit for him. So going into the season, you go, all right, let's see another year of that. If for whatever reason, any three of those guys loses the chemistry they had with the other two, or if Kuzmenko doesn't work with Kempe and Kopitar the way he did down the stretch, or if whatever magic Warren Fogle found fades at all, now you have to rejumble the lines.
Yep.
And who knows if you find chemistry that works the way it did at the end of last season.
And look, from the trade deadline on, the LA Kings led the NHL in goals.
Yeah. And
second
I think
in
we're
goals per game.
Yeah. And we're quite near the top in goals against as well. I can't remember if
the differential was pretty staggering.
Like, they were. I mean, they were the best team. There's no question. Well, except for maybe St. Louis, but
St. Louis was the team ahead of them in goals scored.
Yeah.
And they went on their heater.
Mm-hmm.
But it finally worked, right? Like the Kings tried the entire lineup on Kopitar and Kempe's left.
Yep.
And then they bring in Andrei Kuzmenko, and all of a sudden, not only does it make that line fall into place, but the entire lineup just fell into place. So will they be the same as the end of last season? Barring injury, I would say it's super likely game one, they are the same.
You have to try it, right?
You have to try it.
Yeah.
And then I think there's more pieces that fit in different places this year than last year if it doesn't work to make changes. But I think it took, 4 or 5 games last year? It was on the opening road trip that they switched the lines back up. Yeah. Byfield went back to the top line. Fiala went with the trickle down happened from there. It did not take long. And Jim Hiller has shown that if it ain't working, he's going to try something different.
Mm-hmm.
He is not going to just roll with things that he doesn't feel are working. He will make the changes. You might say too quickly at times, right? But he's going to try to do something different if it's not working. So I think it's going to start that way. I'd like to see it get a run because it was so effective last year. And if it is, then maybe the Kings finally have that 3-line system that they've been trying to find for 3-4 years.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, I hate to sound like too much of a homer for it, but it really was kind of perfectly balanced down the stretch. I mean, every single one of those players was in a spot that made perfect sense for their skill set, their experience, all of it, right? Like, I get it. People wanted the BFF line, Byfield, Fogle, Fiala, but let's be honest. The player that Fogle is and the game that he plays just makes so much more sense alongside Danault and Moore, assuming you've got 2 lines playing in front of them that are just, pumping in goals every time you blink.
And you can put Alex Laferriere, I think, with any 2 players on the roster, and he will be Alex Laferriere. Like, he'll be himself. He'll click. He'll be fine.
And I said this a couple times last year, but one of the things that I just constantly forget is how fast Alex Laferriere is. And on a line with Fiala and Byfield, to have a winger who plays a sandpaper-esque game, but who can also fly. It's not a very common combination, I don't think.
He's just a player, you just look at a guy like, that guy's a player. He's just a player.
And it's one of those wild statements that doesn't mean anything, and yet it means everything. I think it was Jim Fox who in Laferriere's first training camp was just like, he just looks like a hockey player.
Exactly.
And you're like, well, they're all wearing equipment. They all look like hockey players, but
you just, like, what it means, right? But you can't quantify it.
No, you just
know it when you don't.
Doesn't mean a single thing, and yet it means everything.
Means everything.
Yeah. So the next question, and this is gonna loop in a lot of the stuff we talked about. Next question is: will the top power play unit run with 4 forwards or 5 forwards? And I don't know that the answer to this will necessarily come from camp, but they'll certainly try it out. Once Kuzmenko got here last year at the trade deadline, we found out that I believe it was Adrian Kempe who went to the coaching staff and with his idea of what the power play should look like. And at times it ran with 5 forwards and it looked real good.
I mean, my favorite stat from last year's Kings team is that they scored more power play goals from the trade deadline on, playoffs included, than October through March, which is a very unfortunate reflection on the first 6 months of the season, because that was not good. But man, it clicked once Kuzmenko came in and once they went to 5 forwards. Someone told me that 5-person unit was the highest producing 5-person unit in the league from the deadline on the 5 forward specific look. Ken Holland has said that's the plan, and the plan is the plan till it's not. But I think they're going to give it a long look to start, because it was rough for a while.
It sure was,
and then all of a sudden it was not, and it looked really good.
And it also has sort of trickle down impact on the defensive pairings, because traditionally you can find minutes for defensemen on special teams, right? You can say like, okay, you're going to play X amount of minutes at even strength, but you're top of the lineup, like Drew Doughty's always going to find an extra 2 to 3 minutes a game on the power play. And part of the expectation for Brandt Clarke this year, I would assume, is power play time.
Yep.
But if they're going with 5 forwards, at least on the top power play unit, does Drew Doughty play on the second power play unit? Does Brandt Clarke play on the second power play unit?
Or do they both play on the second power play unit?
They could go with 2. Yeah, that's true. They could go with 3 forwards and 2 defensemen.
Right?
Yeah. No, it's me tapping that's why they play the game sign again. It's going to be
for sure. And it's a good transition into question 10, because the guy who allows this whole thing to work is Adrian Kempe, right? Like he's taken shifts on defense. He's not a modern day Sergei Fedorov. Sergei Fedorov is one of the best, but he can do it, right? Like I think there is an alternate reality where Adrian Kempe is like a top pairing defenseman in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's somebody made a highlight reel clip this summer, a fan edit.
It was Dmitry Filipovic.
Yeah, and there's like at least 2 or 3 hip checks.
Absolute electric factory watching this Adrian Kempe defensive compilation.
Right. Big open ice hip checks, defensive plays. Yeah, it's wild. The question is, will Adrian Kempe sign an extension? And, we saved it for last because we probably should have had it on the offseason top 10 questions.
That was the one where we did the whole 10 and we were like,
yeah, whoops.
We screwed that up. And then we added it as an 11.
It's funny. It's I think part of the reason it didn't occur to me to include in the initial one for the offseason is that I didn't think it would be a lingering issue. But now that we're at the brink of camp, and listen, to be clear, if anyone believes in jinxes or shooting yourself in the foot, we'll have this conversation and Adrian Kempe will sign a contract extension tomorrow morning and all of this will be irrelevant. But
sure,
now that we're on the brink of camp and he doesn't have an extension, and equally important, neither do Kaprizov, McDavid,
Eichel, McDavid,
and then whatever's going on with the Hughes, I hear rumors that they want to hit free agency at the same time. If I were Kempe's representation, not Adrian Kempe, but if I were Kempe's agent, I would want this to go as long as humanly possible. Just to see what the market shapes up to be, what the landscape of the league is. Let's say one of those guys, and we'll talk about this once the season starts, I'm sure. But if one of those guys winds up in a Pacific Division team that they weren't previously on, that kind of changes everything, right? Like if Eichel stays in Vegas and McDavid goes to Vancouver and Kaprizov comes to Edmonton, or McDavid stays in Edmonton, Eichel stays in Vegas and Kaprizov comes to, Calgary. So all of a sudden you got all of these guys in the Pacific. That just changes the math. Ever so slightly. If the Kings,
as does the contracts that those players sign, potentially, right?
Yeah. And who's got the space to accommodate, and
and look, Connor McDavid is going to get paid more than Adrian Kempe.
Totally. I mean, all those guys probably will.
Probably will. And look, I think so highly of Adrian Kempe.
Mm-hmm.
But those are 3 of the top 10 players in the NHL. So he's going to get paid, deservedly so.
Yeah.
He kind of took a little bit of a security-based contract last time rather than a fully bet on himself contract.
Yep.
Which probably cost him a few bucks with how well he followed up that breakout year with 3 outstanding years. And he deserves to get his bag here, right? Like I think there's a lot of positive signs. I think the rumblings around Kempe seem to be more positive about him staying than the other guys right now. Like, he has outright said in an interview, "I want to stay."
Mm-hmm.
The Kings have outright said, "We want him to stay." And I feel like in a few of those other conversations, the team has said, "We want this player to stay," but there hasn't been as definitive of a "I want to stay" as Kempe. He said it during exit interviews. He said it at player media tour in Vegas. Those seem to be signs that point to a contract getting signed.
And I'm not intimately familiar with all the other guys' stories, but Eichel not drafted by the Golden Knights. Kaprizov was drafted by Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know if he's married or has kids. I believe Connor McDavid is not married without kids. Adrian Kempe,
or married without kids.
He got married. Okay.
He is, yeah.
Adrian Kempe, if I'm not mistaken, just married, just had a kid.
Yeah.
So not that means anything, but motivation, I suppose, extra motivation to stay in one spot. The place that drafted him, place that he's been, he is. I mean, I was looking at the top numbers of all the former Kings, but he's climbing the list of games played, goals, points for all-time Kings. It is now, I would argue, impossible to write the history of the LA Kings without mentioning Adrian Kempe. He sticks around for another year or two and has these kind of seasons he's had for the past 3, and he becomes theoretically a top 10 player all time for the franchise.
It's kind of crazy, right? Like, when you think about,
yes, it is, frankly.
And it's a testament to it's an example of patience, right, in development, both player and team. But I'd love to go back to 2019 and find the get this guy out of here takes, right? Because at that point he had been in the league a few years and just hadn't found that stride offensively. And man, where would the franchise be if they didn't believe in him, and keep him around? Because you could make a very easy argument he's the best player on the team. And man, is he just an outstanding player who I want to see re-signed.
He's 14th in games played currently. He's
in franchise history.
Yeah, 30 behind Kyle Clifford.
Crazy.
Yes, 30 behind Kyle Clifford, 43 behind Mike Murphy. He's about 100 behind Butch Goring, 113 behind Jonathan Quick. If he sticks around for 2 or 3 more years, he winds up in Marcel Dion, Trevor Lewis territory. And points wise, he is 50 behind Mike Murphy, 60 behind Charlie Simmer. I'm rounding. He's about 80 points behind Jim Fox. So, neither of us are Adrian Kempe. I'm not even going to pretend to know what the heart wants. Then there's also, there's, like I said, there's your representation leaning on you to do different things. There's your family. Who knows? Maybe his family wants him to play in Nashville. I don't know. But the reason we have it in there is because once the season starts, all of these conversations get kicked into hyperdrive. And so for training camp, it's looming out there, because once the season starts, then you start getting the conversations about, we don't want to make it a distraction. It'll be happening behind the scenes. And we've seen over the last couple of years, Gavrikov, Roy, others, where you went into the season and it was like, we're not going to talk about this. Season's happening. We'll figure it out. You hear rumblings and rumors during the season that it'll get done, and then boom, it's July 1st and it hasn't gotten done, and the guy leaves.
Neither of those players signed. Yeah. Even though I think there was a lot of positive momentum around both. So no sure things. No, for sure.
But in the camp, it'll be a conversation, and I'm sure he'll get asked about it by day one. It won't be me, it won't be you, but I'm sure somebody will ask him about it. Well, maybe it'll be you. It's not going to be me.
I think it would be people not doing their job if the question wasn't asked. And I think Adrian Kempe will be well rehearsed on what he wants to say.
I would expect that Jim Hiller, Adrian Kempe, Ken Holland, Luke Robitaille, anybody with any stake in the game will be asked about it day one of camp repeatedly.
Yep. No, for sure. So. And look, I'm going to be optimistic. I think it gets done before the season starts. That's my gut. But
Someone's got to be optimistic. Like I said, I can't.
I hope that it does.
I can't turn off the part of my brain that thinks like his agent. And if I were any of those guys' agents, I would want to take it to late June. We still do we know actually when the CBA contract limit changes take place?
There was something that came out about it, and actually I think got pushed back.
Right.
The 8-year term. But Adrian Kemp, that's another thing, right? Is he is eligible for an 8-year term.
Yes.
Which will be leaving the CBA. So he could, I think, sign in free agency for 7 elsewhere, but like he's hitting it at the last possible chance really you could get to sign an 8-year contract.
My memory
is extra security.
Is that the next CBA would begin in September of 2026.
I think it's September 26th.
Right, that's the date I have in my head, which means, like you said, if he wanted to sign, if he went to free agency on July 1st, came back and signed with the Kings, it would be 7 years. Wait, do I have that right? Yeah, 7 years until September 26th. At which point it would be
7 and 6, not even 7.
Right, right. So it's business stuff. It's complicated. It's annoying, but it is what it is. Those are our 10 questions for training camp. It starts this week. It's so funny, Zach. All summer long, I had all these dates on the calendar. Rookie camp, training camp, the end of my chemo, all this stuff. And I just genuinely can't believe this happens every summer, right? You just you hit those dog days of summer where you're like, there's never going to be hockey again. I'm just going to be watching, golf and whatever else happens during. I don't even know what baseball. I'm going to be watching baseball forever. And here we are. It's the middle of September and camp is back. Hockey's back. So
I was literally just writing this in a story for Tuesday of like, for me, whether I'm 2 months away from a day like this or 2 days, it just feels like a day that's never going to happen.
Right.
And it's like training camp starts on Thursday.
Yep.
It's a few days away, but like, it doesn't feel like it's just like, we're still working towards it, like it's still the off season, whatever. It's like, then Thursday, it's like, well, whether you're ready or not, or prepared or not, there it is.
So I don't know if
we go.
I don't know if this is a function of my age or the last 6 months of my life, but because I've been living my life in 3-week blocks in between each chemo infusion, I have noticed that time seems to disappear faster. Now that also happens the older you get. But it's one of those things where I was like, okay, and I would talk to you about it, right? I'd say like, I have an appointment on this day. I've, this thing is coming up and that thing's coming up. And it would always feel like, oh yeah, okay. Even when I scheduled the scan that I had last Tuesday, it was like, yeah, okay, it's a month out. And then before I knew it, I was sitting there, and then even then it's like, oh yeah, a week before I get the results. And then weeks gone like that. And then you're like, okay, 2 games in Irvine. It's going to take me forever to drive, but before you know it, it's over. And here, it'll be Thursday. Yeah, it'll be Thursday before we're done recording this.
And it'll be October 7th.
Yes, exactly.
Before you know it. And then
we'll be in the playoffs. And it'll be chaos. So Zach Dooley, thank you as always for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And, I don't know exactly what the schedule is going to look like because camp is chaotic and if Adrian Kempe does sign a contract tomorrow morning, we'll obviously have a reaction to that.
Emergency podcast.
Yeah. If Corey Perry returns miraculously 6 to 8 weeks earlier than planned, that'll be one. So, generally speaking, twice a week, but otherwise keep your ears to the pavement and we'll talk to you soon.